Imagine for a second that you've been at sea for like 3 solid months. I mean, scurvy is creeping into the crew, the fresh water turned brackish weeks ago, and you're navigating this wooden ship through just the pitch black void of the Indian Ocean.
Oh, man, yeah, just total sensory deprivation out there.
Right. And you finally step onto the rocky shore of this uncharted island, just completely desperate for supplies. The fog is incredibly thick. The isolation is crushing. And then from the dense tree line, you hear your wife's voice calling your name.
A voice that, has absolutely no business being thousands of miles from your home. I mean, it is just a moment of pure logic-breaking terror.
It's horrifying. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are opening up a stack of really rare Arabic folklore texts today, and we're examining a centuries-old visual monster manual.
Yeah, it's essentially this ancient zoological chart of Arabian mythological creatures. It's amazing.
It really is. And our mission today is to pull a forgotten nightmare out of the margins of these texts. We're looking at an entity known as the Daahath.
And if you look at the visual encyclopedia provided in our sources, it's just a fascinating document because most of the page is dedicated to the heavy hitters of Arabian folklore, right?
Yeah, the ones everyone knows.
Exactly. You see the ghoul painted with its sort of predatory desert-dwelling stance. You see these towering shadows representing the jinn. But tucked away among those famous legends is an illustration that just forces you to lean in and really question what you're looking at.
It completely shatters the aesthetic of the entire chart. Like, the Daahath is drawn as this deeply unsettling biological hybrid.
Unsettling is definitely the word for
Oh,
it.
right. It has the massive feathered body of a giant bird, but it's supported by these long, wildly powerful legs of an ostrich. But then, sprouting from that avian body is the torso and head of a human.
It's totally bizarre.
And it's looking back at the viewer with this uncanny, deformed face and these glowing, yellowish-red eyes.
It is the absolute definition of an unnatural configuration.
Oh.
I mean, unlike the monsters that haunt ancient ruins or, endless deserts, the Daahath is this phantom guardian born exclusively of salt water and coastal fog, and really just the terror of the maritime unknown.
Which is such a specific vibe.
Yeah. It haunted the shores of the Arabian Gulf, the Red Sea, and those forgotten islands of the Indian Ocean.
Which makes this so much more than just, a catalog of a scary monster.
Yeah.
We're actually using these folklore texts to map the psychology of the ancient human mind.
Exactly. We're getting a window into how they thought.
Right. We want to understand the mechanics of how early sailors processed the sheer, unadulterated terror of the vast sea. Because a monster like this, it doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It's reverse engineered from the specific anxieties of the people who invented it.
Totally. And to decode the creature, we first have to sort of reconstruct the environment of the 9th century Arab sailor. I mean, the historical stage here is just staggering.
Oh, the distances they covered are insane.
Right. These navigators were mapping the Arabian Gulf. They were crossing the tempest-tossed Arabian Sea, venturing deep into the Indian Ocean, and sailing all the way down the really treacherous coasts of East Africa.
And doing all of this on vessels held together by, like, coir rope and wooden pegs.
Yeah. Literally stitched together boats.
Entirely at the mercy of the monsoon winds. I mean, they were entering completely alien ecosystems. They'd stumble upon isolated islands that weren't on any map anywhere.
And they would encounter these massive, unfamiliar flora and fauna. So if a ship goes missing, or a crew member steps into the jungle looking for a freshwater spring and just never comes back, the surviving sailors have this massive psychological void to fill.
Because the human mind hates a vacuum.
Exactly. They needed a culprit. And that psychological need generated a deeply fractured mythology, which, honestly, our sources capture perfectly.
Yeah, the sources are really clear in how messy this oral tradition was. Since it was passed between largely illiterate sailors, the texts reveal 3 distinct and sometimes contradictory narratives about what the Daahath actually is.
Right, there isn't just one agreed-upon version.
No, not at all. So the most prevalent one is the avian hybrid. That's the ostrich-human monstrosity we just talked about from the visual chart.
Yeah, and I want to look at the mechanics of how that specific image evolved, because it's fascinating. Picture a tired, massively dehydrated sailor dropping anchor off the coast of East Africa or maybe Madagascar right at twilight.
Okay, sisters.
He goes ashore and sees a literal ostrich, or perhaps an elephant bird, which were very real, terrifyingly massive birds that existed in that area.
Oh, wow. Yeah, elephant birds were huge.
Right. So he sees this in the dark, he panics, runs back to his ship, and tells this frantic story. And by the time that story is traded across the Indian Ocean, bouncing from port to port, the giant bird mutates.
Like an ancient, terrifying game of maritime telephone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It gains a human face, a human torso. The mythology basically outpaces the zoology.
But wait, is it just a case of mistaken zoology, or is there a specific reason it took that exact shape?
Well, I would take it a step further. What's fascinating here is that the mutation into a human-animal hybrid isn't just an exaggeration. It's a direct reflection of their own geographic disorientation.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, like the Daahath is described as taller than a man because the environment itself felt overpowering and insurmountable. And that deformed human face, that uncanny valley effect, it's a projection of the sailor's own fading humanity.
Because they've been at sea for so long.
Exactly. After months at sea, suffering from malnutrition, sensory deprivation, their grip on human civilization was literally slipping. The monster is just a mirror.
That perfectly explains the second narrative in the texts, actually. The idea of the Daahath as an island jinn.
Yes, the jinn narrative.
Right. In this version, it isn't a biological animal at all. It's this ancient supernatural squatter that absolutely despises human intrusion. Like, it colonizes abandoned islands with the full purpose of dooming any approaching crews.
It's incredibly territorial. And that ties directly into the third interpretation we found in the folklore, which casts the Daahath as a guardian spirit.
Oh, right. The protector of the ruins.
Yeah. In these specific tales, the entity is an evil soul bound to a location to protect ancient treasures or, forgotten nameless tombs from strangers.
Let's analyze that guardian spirit concept pragmatically for a second. Like, if I'm a seasoned ship captain navigating these waters, and I know a specific island is filled with crumbling, dangerous ruins, hidden sinkholes, or just hostile terrain.
You're not going to just say, watch your step.
Exactly. I don't tell my exhausted, highly superstitious crew to be careful of the unstable architecture. I tell them an evil spirit guards a nameless tomb there.
Right. The Daahath becomes a quarantine zone enforced by storytelling.
Exactly. It's a mechanism to keep wandering sailors close to the beach and close to the boat.
It's a brilliant way to enforce maritime safety through terror. And the terror is highly specific. When we look at the Daahath's actual methods of attack, it becomes really clear that this creature doesn't hunt like a lion or a bear.
No, its arsenal is entirely psychological. It's specifically designed to exploit the vulnerabilities of men who are already on the brink of collapse.
Totally.
I mean, let's unpack its powers. The sources describe this escalating sequence of horror. First, you have the environment. The Daahath utilizes stealth, vanishing into coastal forests, disappearing behind jagged rocks, or literally just melting into the thick sea fog.
Yeah, it creates this pervasive, clinging paranoia. You know something is in the mist with you, but your eyes just can't focus on it.
And then comes the speed. The texts claim it runs faster than a horse, able to cross an entire beach in mere moments.
Which is terrifying, because the implication is that flight is impossible. If it targets you, you cannot outrun it.
Right. But the real genius of the myth is that the creature rarely engages in physical combat at all. Its primary weapon is misdirection.
Yeah, it doesn't want to fight you. It wants to disorient you. It forces you to lose your cognitive map of the island, sort of pushing you away from the safety of your ship and into the hostile terrain.
And it achieves this through its most devastating power mimicry. Oh, this part is so creepy.
It really is. The texts explicitly state that Daahath perfectly imitates the voices of fellow crewmates or even loved ones back home, calling out from the darkness to lure victims away from the group.
And you see this entire psychological sequence play out in one of the most famous accounts in our sources. It's called The Story of the Island of the Fishermen.
Oh, I love this story. Walk us through it.
Okay, so a crew docks at an unknown island to wait out a severe storm. Night falls, and the darkness on these isolated islands is absolute. There's no light pollution.
Just pitch black.
Pitch black. Soon, they start hearing these strange, unidentifiable noises echoing from the tree line.
Just the sheer tension of sitting on a wooden boat, staring into a black jungle, I'd be losing my mind.
Right. Then, they see the silhouette. Just this bizarre, long-legged creature watching them from the edge of the beach. And one of the men, whether he's driven by panic or maybe an attempt to protect the ship, he decides to give chase. He runs after the long-legged silhouette into the dark.
By himself. Completely by himself. So the crew waits all night. In the morning, they form a search party, and they follow his tracks deep into the island. But the footprints just end abruptly at a cluster of jagged rocks.
Wait, they just end? No sign of anything else?
Nothing. No blood. No sign of a struggle. Just empty space. And the ship's elder looks at the tracks and proclaims, "The Daahath took him."
Okay, hold on. Let's look at this clinically for a second. If we strip away the glowing eyes and the phantom bird legs, what are we actually looking at here in the real world?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's pretty grim.
Right. We have a sailor suffering from severe isolation, a total lack of vitamin C, and chronic sleep deprivation. He's wandering around a foggy, rocky coast. The mimicry, like hearing your wife's voice on an uncharted island that isn't magic.
No, not at all.
We are describing severe auditory hallucinations. The human brain, starved of familiar stimuli in the middle of the ocean, desperately starts playing back familiar sounds. Isn't this just a sailor having a psychological break?
Yes, you're exactly right. And we also have to factor in the acoustics of the environment. I mean, sound behaves very strangely over open ocean water, and when it's echoing off jagged coastal rock formations.
Oh, sure, the echoes would be super distorted.
Exactly. A seabird's cry bouncing through a foggy cavern can easily be distorted into what sounds like a human scream or a name being called. So the Daahath's powers are literal manifestations of isolation madness and the disorienting nature of fog.
So the misdirection, the wandering off into the dark, this is a catastrophic psychological break. The Daahath is essentially a 9th century diagnosis for psychosis induced by sea fever.
That is the brilliance of the folklore, honestly. It assigns a physical shape to a physiological and psychological collapse that they just didn't have the scientific vocabulary to explain.
They didn't know what scurvy was doing to their brains.
Right. They couldn't diagnose scurvy-induced hallucinations, but they could point to the tree line and say, the Daahath is tricking our minds.
Which brings us to, I think, the most fascinating sociological insight in this entire stack of sources. If the Daahath is this incredibly potent, psychologically complex manifestation of terror, why has almost no one heard of it today?
That's a great question.
I mean, the texts provide this amazing structural comparison between the Daahath and the most famous Arabian monster of all, the Ghoul.
Yeah, and the contrast between the two reveals exactly how history decides which monsters live on and which ones just fade away.
Let's break down the mechanics of that. I mean, the Ghoul is the gold standard of Arabian mythology.
Oh, absolutely.
It's based in the desert. Its targets are land travelers, caravans, nomads. Its method is brutal and direct. It physically attacks and consumes its victims. It is very firmly a monster of the sand.
Right.
But the Daahath is entirely maritime. It targets sailors and pearl divers. It relies on misdirection, on getting you hopelessly lost in the fog. It is a monster of the saltwater.
And that geographic divide is also, crucially, a massive class divide. Our sources make this really important observation. The Daahath is completely absent from classic, scholarly Arabic texts.
Wait, really? It's not in the classic literature at all.
Not at all. You will not find it in the grand, formal literature compiled by the elites of the era.
Ah, because the cultural capital of the ancient Arab world was centered in the desert, not the sea.
Precisely. The sweeping epics, the prestigious Bedouin poetry, the scholarly focus that all revolved around desert life. The Ghoul belonged to that world, so the literate elites wrote it down, completely immortalizing it in the canon.
Wow. So the Ghoul had a PR team, basically.
Pretty much. Meanwhile, the Daahath belonged purely to the marginalized workers on the fringes of the empire. It was the oral tradition of illiterate fishermen, deckhands, and merchants who spent their lives sweating on these wooden decks.
So because it was a working-class myth, it never made it into the royal libraries.
Exactly. It survived only in the whispered warnings between sailors pulling up nets in the dark.
That is wild. The survival of a myth depends entirely on who holds the pen.
Yep. History is written by the victors, and folklore is written by the literate.
Man, when those generations of sailors passed away and those specific trade routes modernized, the oral traditions simply evaporated. The Daahath died because the working class didn't have the means to write it into history.
It's a tragic mechanism of folklore, really. It makes you wonder how many other incredibly complex psychological monsters have we lost just because they belong to the wrong social class.
How vast was the unwritten mythology of the ancient world? We'll probably never know. But even if the Daahath didn't survive in the grand literature, the psychological dread it represented was very, very real to the people who feared it.
Oh, absolutely. The fear was genuine.
Now, to bring this back to solid ground for a second, our sources are explicit that there is no biological proof of the Daahath.
Right, obviously.
It was a composite creature, a patchwork of genuine megafauna sightings mixed with the very real, very lethal threat of wandering off on a remote island. But the myth served a profound purpose for the people who shared it.
It really did. It categorized the ultimate binary fear of the ancient mariner.
Let's talk about that binary fear because I think this is the core takeaway for anyone listening to this deep dive right now. Why does this ancient, forgotten birdman matter to us today?
Well, think about it from the perspective of a sailor navigating the edge of the known world. There were essentially two horrifying fates you could face. The first was being swallowed by the ocean, just drowning in the deep, cold, massive unknown.
Which is terrifying enough on its own.
Right, but the second fate was surviving the water, making it to land only to wash up on an island ruled by the Daahath.
So the ocean kills your body, but the island, the isolation, the sensory deprivation, the fog that kills your mind?
Exactly. It is a brilliant testament to how humans instinctively use storytelling to process these abstract, overwhelming terrors. I mean, when you are staring into the abyss of an uncharted map, the human brain demands a monster to focus on.
It needs a face.
Yes. It's easier to fear a bird-leg demon than it is to face the vast, uncaring emptiness of the universe.
That makes total sense, which actually brings us right back to that visual chart we started with, that ancient monster manual with the Daahath just sitting there weirdly in the margins. Every single creature painted on that page was invented to explain a shadow, an echo, or a primal fear that our ancestors couldn't control.
Yeah, the environment completely dictated the monster. They drew the Daahath to put a face on the terrifying expanse of the uncharted ocean.
So I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to chew on today. If our ancestors invented the Daahath to be the phantom guardian of the uncharted maps of the ancient world, what modern monsters are we quietly inventing right now?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Right. Think about the vast, uncharted territories of our own era. As we map the darkest, most isolated corners of the deep internet, or as we stare into the expanding voids of deep space, what new mythologies are we building to explain the shadows? What new phantom guardians are we drawing in the margins of our own modern maps?
The technology changes, the maps expand, but
Yeah.
the human need to put a face on the unknown, that is a mechanism that never stops working.
Never. So keep checking the margins.